Several years ago, when I was a graduate student at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, my roommate and I took a trip to the Smoky Mountains in the fall because I was really aching for some good autumn color. Because I was born and half raised back in the eastern United States, and I just so missed the orange-red color of the fall leaves that living out west, I just didn't see. So we went to the Smoky Mountains, we saw gorgeous autumn color, and it really fed my soul. But I gotta tell you, the drive back to Nashville was a nail biter. We were driving back at night, and this heavy fog descended on us and made the roads nearly impassable. There were no fog lines along the edges of the road like I was used to in Washington State, so you really could not tell where you were on the road, and the visibility was down to about 6 feet. So at any moment, we didn't know if we were going to slam into anybody. So at that point, what do? Leading teams through ambiguous situations and coaches helping leaders lead teams through ambiguous situations can feel a lot like being on that road in that heavy fog along that highway that we were on in the Smoky Mountains. And what I'm going to do today is show you how you can help leaders navigate through ambiguous situations. Last year, one of our Revitalab coaches had a client who was dealing with a crisis filled with ambiguity. It impacted everyone in the organization all around the world. No one knew when the crisis would be resolved, what factors would best address the crisis, and how they were going to personally get through it. That is a lot of chaos. And in those kinds of situations, people look to leaders for answers. And as the coach said, her concern was not knowing how much to empathize during the coaching session and how much to encourage her client to direct their energy toward action. She said, "I just don't want my clients in that organization to feel like I am disconnecting from what they are feeling." As a coach, it can often seem like you're trying to walk this tightrope between how to have and show empathy with where your clients are because they are in such a stressful situation and still follow a work agenda with them. And like a tightrope, you can fall off either side. You can spend all your time in empathy, allowing your client to vent their frustration and fear and anger, which keeps them and you in that pit with them. Or you can spend all your time redirecting them to the work agenda, which the client can experience as you being tone deaf and them feeling deflated or frustrated, not only by the situation, but by your response to them. In other words, neither way is mobilizing or energizing. So now you're faced with a dilemma: how to manage all the ambiguity you and the client are facing right now in this moment. And you know you're dealing with ambiguity when you spend a lot of time second-guessing yourself about how to proceed. And the leader is experiencing the same depth of second-guessing during ambiguous times. So why am I talking about ambiguity in the fog of crisis in the power passage of the roadmap? Like I mentioned before, in times of ambiguity and crisis, people turn to leaders for a way through the crisis. Ambiguity cranks up people's survival responses. What drives demotivation and despair and feeling so deflated is a sense of powerlessness. Leaders often don't realize that they can use the power in their role to help themselves and their leaders through this crisis, and they can do it by being authentic. Much of it depends on how they frame their conversations with their teams and how to encourage their team's initiative to join them in finding a way through. Using their power means they realize that it is up to them to create a sturdy container for collaboration and to make sure that any decisions they make are grounded in real information, realistic timeframes, and commitment to the path forward. So I want to talk about how to help leaders and coaches, by the way, manage themselves in a highly ambiguous situation. And it's almost like they have to do this kind of management day by day, or week by week, or month by month, depending on what the issue or the crisis is, and how often they need to reinforce this container of collaboration. And honestly, I wish I had known this approach decades ago when I was on that foggy road in rural Tennessee. We did make it home safely that night, but it wasn't until many years and clients later that the approach to ambiguity became clear, based on a lot of experience with leaders and their teams. Essentially, this process involves the leader asking themselves a series of questions and sharing the answers with the people they lead. They ask these questions whether it's every day or once a week or once a month, but the questions are the same. This is a way to help leaders and teams face what is real and at the same time find where their leverage points of control are. So the first question is, what do I know to be true right now? And then the second question is, what do I not know? What's missing from what I know? Once the leader is clear on the answers to those two questions, then they share their answers with their team. Then I encourage the leader to ask their team those same two questions. For example, they would be asking, what do you know to be true right now? What's doable right now? What's the information you know right now and from what sources, whether it's inside the company or from the market or suppliers or government decisions, whatever relevant information you have right now. And then, team, what do you not know? Why leaders and teams would do this together is that when both sides share what they do and do not know, the other side may have information that they can fill in some of the blanks. So it's a way to expand the knowledge base between the leader and the team, or for that matter, between any two sides of an organization. The conversation could just as easily be between a team member and their boss, or a leader and their team of peers. Now, what the leader and team know and don't know has been expanded. The next step is to decide what sources they can go to and get more information to fill any remaining gaps. Once they do that, then the leader is in a sorting process, some of which they can do with their team and some of which they may do themselves as they get clear what actions they are willing to take given the risks involved. One risk being that in an ambiguous situation, there is no sure thing. Given what they all know now, the leader makes clear what the current goals and timeframes are for those goals. These might be the same goals they had before, or they might have shifted. Often the timeframes need to be adjusted to be more realistic. And finally, they can create an action plan for things they have control over. This is not the time for nice to have or wouldn't it be great if. The way to mobilize yourself and others in an ambiguous situation is to identify what you can control, not what you wish you could control. Next up is the act of support, connection, and empathy that frankly is nerve-wracking for leaders because they fear the answers they're going to get. The leader asks, what are the obstacles you'll face with this action plan and what do you need from me? Gulp. As a coach, when you help leaders go through these steps, you successfully walk that tightrope. Part of what you help leaders do is get ready to really listen and connect with their team and then weigh how much they can give the team of what the team is asking of them and truly weigh it and let the team know what they are able to do for them and what they cannot based on the constraints of the situation. You're helping the leader maintain both backbone and heart throughout that conversation. And if the leader is thinking in terms of backbone, okay, I need to remain clear with my team, and heart, how can I stay connected and curious and caring with them? That whole conversation will go so much better for both the leader and the team, and they'll feel more connected and bonded to each other. As a coach, when you help leaders go through these steps, you successfully walk that tightrope between empathy and work focus also. You help them make progress without disconnecting from their emotional experience of the crisis. If they just go through these steps perfunctorily, they will seem either hard-hearted or not tuned into the times everyone is living through. You help them focus on how they show up with their teams. Do they bring backbone with heart? Can they be clear and compassionate at the same time? This is particularly crucial for leaders who, when under stress, become over-controlling and micromanage. They may be trying to prove their value in a big way. This all comes from a coping skill, a way to manage what is unknown. You could even say it's a grief response, grief that their situation is so out of control and their lives have changed more than they wanted. And they don't know, are they ever going to get to what they used to call normal? There's a grief there. They and their team start to hunker down and cut others off. But leaders can't just command from above and assume that everybody's going to be just fine during their new micromanaging controlling. How are they going to attend to their teams? Here's an important principle you can share with micromanaging or command and control leaders under stress. When you're managing an out-of-control situation, you have to manage to the head and the heart of your team, whether you're strong in both or not, because that's what teams need and respond to. Otherwise, you're going to get increasing frustration and decreasing returns from them. They'll become inefficient. They'll get demoralized. They'll rebel under the radar. You won't know it, but things won't get done. And if you're not speaking to both the head and the heart. And in survival situations, you don't want to drive people away from you or apart from each other. You want to bring them together. Bringing people together when you and their survival emotions have activated is counterintuitive because survival adrenaline and cortisol drive people to preserve themselves and compete for resources and misread situations because the rational part of their brain has been suppressed. This is why it's so hard but so necessary that leaders do these steps during ambiguous situations. As coaches, we want to situate ourselves in this conversation with clients so that leaders face the challenge of this principle. We share the principle with them and then pause long enough for them to absorb the challenge of it, and then respond with their fears and anxieties about how to make it all work. So the crisis your clients are going through is just dialing up the volume on the need for everyone to expand their tolerance for ambiguity, for not knowing an obvious path forward. It's a sign of a mature person to tolerate revising what they thought were their best plans, because now they have to deal with a shifting landscape. An ambiguous situation really calls your clients to lead with more gracefulness, to allow the very real human reactions in crisis to have a voice, while they also lead their teams through this process of creating a new path forward. Which brings us to the last piece about managing ambiguity. Leaders need to have these discussions live. Do it live, whether in person or in virtual meetings. A live conversation is so much better than email or texting when it comes to sorting through information, making decisions, gaining commitment, supporting, acknowledging, and reinforcing. So advocate that the leader has these kinds of conversations live. That's showing a lot of respect for what people are facing, and also that they can add to a mosaic of knowledge and plans to face the crisis. This kind of support shows respect and leverages the team's knowledge and strengths, which also increases the leader's trustworthiness in the eyes of the team. Knowledge, strength, trustworthiness, these are exactly the characteristics that leaders need to have to help teams and themselves navigate through ambiguous situations.